Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the start of a brand new Dominions 5 adventure. This is turn 1 of the late age game LAyercake, where I am playing as Jomon. And this will be an interesting one. I just did that little strategy analysis of Jomon, and you'll see in just a second. I actually took an option that I didn't really talk about much in the game, in that video. As I've said a number of times, Jomon is not a strong nation. And in the late age, it suffers by comparison to a lot of others. So it'll be interesting to see how far I can go with this. I don't anticipate winning this game, full disclosure. If I do, it'll be amazing. But we'll see how things happen. So, my god, Weeaboo Meme Lord, the god of Jomon, is an Earth Serpent. Yeah, just an Earth Serpent with Earth 6. The reason why I took an Earth Serpent, as opposed to one of the others that I had talked about, is that basically I did a whole bunch of testing, and the Earth Serpent is the most reliable within his own dominion at getting underwater without getting hurt. The Earth Serpent has a lot of protection with a hard skin bless, which is all I've given him. I kept him very cheap. So I gave him hard skin and nothing else. He just has Earth 6, which will let him cast high-level Earth rituals later in the game, and will let him forge high-level Earth items if I need that. But mainly, I took him because I was looking around and I was like, yeah, I could take other gods that can expand. I could take a Water 10 Dragon King. I could take the Kami of the Sun. I did quite a bit of testing of the Kami of the Sun. She's actually pretty solid. That Eye Vengeance stacks with her Awe to basically prevent people from hitting her in melee like 80% of the time, and then the ones who do try to hit her go blind. So the Kami of the Sun is pretty solid, but the Kami of the Sun can't go underwater. So there are other options, but the Earth 6 Earth Serpent turned out to be kind of the most, how do I put it, the most efficient, the cheapest. It doesn't have all the same utility. It's slow, it can't fly. It doesn't really do some of the things late game that you might want a Pretender chassis to do, but if Jomon can live into the late game, Jomon actually has a number of tools. I mean, you have the Onmyoji that can cast a lot of high-level spells. You have the Ryujin. You have your national summons, some of which are quite effective. If you mass enough Master Shugenjas, as you will have in the late game, you will have some who are quite effective. It's just a matter of sorting through all the trash randoms until you get there. So late game Jomon doesn't have so much of a problem if it can get to the late game. It still has some problems. But the issue is the early game, and the issue is maintaining consistent, maybe not fast, but consistent expansion in the early game. And that is where Weeaboo Meme Lord, the Great God, will help, because the Earth Serpent in his own domain is nearly invincible. Just protection 31, humans can't hurt him unless they score a critical hit. Which means that, and he has recuperation, so even if he gets afflictions, he'll heal them. And he has fear. So everybody around him is taking morale checks every turn. Which means that the Earth Serpent can win battles just by being fat and walking into an enemy stack and sitting there letting them wail on it until they run away, as it eats like an average of maybe one person every 2 rounds. And he's amphibious. So, since I got this map ahead of time, I looked at the map and I was like, huh, I have a lake here that doesn't connect to any other water provinces, so Atlantis can't take it from me. There is an Atlantis in this game. Other water nations can't take it from me easily. I have a pond here that doesn't connect to anything, so other amphibious nations can't take it from me easily. I have a lake here that connects to 3 provinces, so if I can get into it, which will be a little bit tricky, but if I can get into it, then other amphibious nations can't take it from me easily. In this game, there's only 2 other amphibious nations. There is Atlantis, by far the more dangerous underwater, who starts down here and has his own little underwater playground. And there's Mictlan, who starts up... where exactly does Mictlan start? Mictlan starts over here, I believe. Yeah, I think Mictlan starts over in this direction. Because I remember he was talking about having to cross that river. So he's like over here somewhere. And so he has a little bit of water. And late age Mictlan has some underwater recruits that could be very effective. But once again, he's not going to be easily able to get into my pond. So these are great. That means if I can get into these 2 ponds and build forts there, I'll be able to slowly mass up shark warriors for future amphibious work. And I'll be able to recruit Ryujin steadily without anybody getting up in my business. Because you would have to take amphibious troops and march them across land and then dive into the pond. There's no way to just go from ocean to ocean unless you can teleport or unless you can cast Gateway, which most nations can't do. And I don't think... I know Mictlan can't, and I don't believe... Yeah, Late Age Atlantis can't do it either. Late Age Atlantis has death magic, primarily. So, my starting position. The other reason I took Weeaboo Meme Lord, the Earth Serpent, is because the Earth Serpent is fairly cheap when you go with this little magic, which meant I could afford pretty decent scales. I took Turmoil 3 because low recruitment points don't hurt Jomon much. Most of their units are quite low in terms of recruitment points. The most expensive ones are the Sohei and the Akaoni Samurai, and even they only require about as many recruitment points as resources. So I'm much more likely to be resource capped than I am to be recruitment point capped. The Samurai Archer, probably my best multi-purpose recruit, costs twice as many resources as recruitment points. I took Production 3 for exactly that reason. I took Heat 3, both because it's cheap points, and because Atlantis, in the Late Age, most of their special units use Ice Armor, which have the Ice Protection special ability, and so in hot domains, they're easier to kill. I took Growth 3 because you always take Growth 3. I took Magic 1 because I could afford it, and because it will help my mages research quickly. And I took Luck 1 because I had a few points left over, and I was thinking, okay, look, I could go Misfortune like everybody does if they're power gaming, and max out Magic, and get less Turmoil or something, but the Turmoil doesn't hurt me much, and the Magic I have, Master Shugenjas are reasonably efficient and fast researchers, so I don't really need a whole bunch of Magic. So why not take a Luck scale and see if it helps? I mean, I already have more random events from Turmoil. So I have 16% more random... I'm sorry, I have 11% more random events, and now I have better odds that they're good. So it might help me, at least in a minor way. And Jomon can use all the help they can get. So, I'm going to start scouting. Now, here's the scary thing. I know, because this map was released before the game started, I know where my enemies are. Atlantis is down here. Mictlan is over here. Man is north of them, up here. I'm not too scared of Man. Or is it Man? Actually, no. Man is down here, competing with me for these farms. Ulm is up north in these woods. Late Age Ulm. Potala is over here somewhere. Bogarus is up here. And right here, right in that province right there, is Raga. And that's a fucking problem. Because Raga is by far the rushiest nation in the Late Age. And Jomon is one of the more rush-vulnerable nations in the Late Age because Jomon's early game is weak. So Raga's sacreds are these giant griffin riders that have multiple attacks and high protection and can fly. And they can be blessed, because they're sacred, of course. Raga only can recruit them when it has heat scales, and for that reason Raga almost always takes high heat scales. And they're super expensive, but they're super powerful, especially when you trash your scales and take a tremendously trolly bless, which Raga traditionally does for this reason, because it has super powerful sacreds. I mean, they're as bad as Anakites. They might be more powerful than Anakites just because they can fly. Oh, and when they die, the unit doesn't go away. It transforms into a griffin. The rider dies, but the griffin stays. And the griffin has just as much armor, more morale, reasonably high magic resistance, which is usually the one thing animals don't have, and 3 times as many hit points. It gets 1 fewer attack, though, so, I mean, in that sense it gets weaker, but it doesn't actually go away when you kill it. So, Zayedans, I think they're Zayedans, or are they Zidans? I don't remember. In any case, the Ragan sacred heat units are terrifying. Fortunately, Raga is surrounded by rush targets. It has me, it has Bogarus, who is easy to kill early on and then becomes extremely powerful late game, so there's good reason to kill them early. There's Ulm, which likewise is a blood death nation that is fairly easy to hamper early on, but then becomes very, very powerful as they begin spamming out vampires. They get a special spell that lets them recruit slightly weaker versions of vampire lords from the beginning of the game. They cost a kind of a moderate amount of blood slaves, and they're immortal, so if they die, they just come back within a couple of turns. So Ulm just spams out vampires like they're going out of style and becomes cancer. Killing Ulm quickly is wise if you can. And then they have Potala down here, and Potala are also fairly easy rush targets. They're not the easiest because they have they do have their sacreds, the Naga warriors that they have a hypnotize attack, and they're fairly solid, but they're capital only. And otherwise, Potala has a slow early game. So basically, Raga's player is new. He said that. It's his first multiplayer game as Raga. I'm not sure if it's his first multiplayer game ever or just his first as Raga. But how the game goes will kind of depend on what he chooses to do. If he decides to just rush straight south and try to wipe me out early on, Weeaboo Meme Lord is my only hope. And even he probably cannot win against Blessed Zayedans. He's tough, but he ain't that tough. The fear might do it, but my toolkit against Ragan Sacreds is limited. If he goes in another direction, or if he expands just generally before picking a target, which is what I kind of hope he does, then I have a chance, because Master Shugenjas can get some magic that will help. Destruction that breaks armor, or Armor of Achilles, which is a single target armor breaking spell. Those are both very effective. Like, I don't know, Tangle Vines or something. Anything that stops their mobility or lowers their protection will allow my troops to get at them, because my troops do high damage and have good attack stats. They just have to get to the point where they can accomplish something. So, I only have a hard skin bless, but at this point, there's actually no reason not to recruit like Yamabushi or something. They actually require fewer resources than Samurai Archers, and as I said, I'm resource capped. So I'm going to recruit. My first recruitment is going to be 4 Yamabushi, and with 21 resources, I can get one more unit. It's probably going to be a Sohei, because a Sohei is basically a better Naginata Samurai, and I can afford him. So we're going to get a Sohei as well. I can't, because I only took Dominion 4. We'll get a Naginata Samurai. Or maybe... Oh, 21. Yeah, I could only get 1 Ashigaru. So yeah, I'd rather have a Naginata dude than 1 Ashigaru. So, strategy-wise, Weeaboo Meme Lord is going to spend his first turn researching, because I don't know what's around me. Masamori, my ninja, is going to move in this direction and head up to see what Raga is doing, and Tsunekage is going to become the prophet. Now, a lot of people will say, as Jomon, you want to wait until you have a Master Shugenja and make him your prophet, and that's because the prophet gains access to a spell if he has the right magic, which all Master Shugenjas do, that basically lets him boost all of his magic paths, and you can use that to make a wizard who's actually effective. That's fair. That's a reasonable strategy, but I don't have... My Sacreds are not good, because all I've done is buff their protection, and for them it actually effectively buffs their protection by like 3 points, because they wear armor. So it kicks them up to about protection 18. Not a big difference. So I can't expand with Sacreds. And I do kind of need a prophet to help my expansion, because my starting army as Jomon is fairly anemic, and having that smite ability is really useful. Plus, I need my Master Shugenjas to be researching, because if we look at research, we've taken even research here. It's not random research. In order to get an underwater fort built, without a water-breathing blast. An underwater fort, lab, and temple, which is what you need to start recruiting Ryujin, and what I want pretty early, albeit it doesn't have to be immediate because Ryujin aren't useful immediately, but it has to be pretty early. I need Construction 2. I need Construction 2 because Construction 2 gives me rings of water breathing that I can give to one of my monks and send him underwater. That's not... In test games, I've often made that my first research priority. If I make it my first research priority, I can have an underwater complex recruiting Ryujin by the end of year 0. But by the end of year 0, Ryujin aren't really useful yet because I don't have the research to make them really useful. So what I want to do before that is I want to research alteration, and I want to research alteration at least up to level 2. There's a twofold reason for that. Earth Meld is an excellent spell for locking units down and letting my samurai kill them. Unfortunately, it doesn't affect flying units, which Zedaeans are. I really can't remember if they're Zedaeans or Zayedans. I'm just going to say Zedaeans for now. I think it's Zedaeans. However, level 2 will also give me Armor of Achilles. It only affects 1 square and it can miss, but it's Earth 1, which means every single mage I recruit can cast this spell. And with Precision 3, it's fairly likely to hit, and if it hits, it totally destroys the target's armor. Against Zedaeans, that will be huge. So, we're going to get Alteration level 2 first. We're also going to want Conjuration, because Conjuration level 2 lets me summon Karasu Tengu, level 3 lets me summon Konoha Tengu. Both of those are very, very useful summons for Jomon, even though the Tengu in question are not the hardiest units. They hit hard, they do a lot of damage, and they have lightning bolts that they throw, like Storm Devils, but much, much weaker because they only have 1 shot. But they're fragile is the problem. Now, they're sacred, so the Hard Skin Bless will help them. It will make them less fragile. They'll still be fragile, but with their good stats and their flying ability, they're important. If you want to stay alive as Jomon, having the option at least to panic summon a whole bunch of Tengu is really, really important. So we're going to get Alteration level 2. That will take me a little bit. After that, I'll decide whether I can go straight for Construction to get my Ryujin factory running, or whether I need to grab Conjuration first. So that is going to be my first turn, actually. You can see my starting army here. I start off with 15 garbage infantry. Ashigaru are bad. They're just not good at things. And I start off with 10 samurai archers, which are by far the more important part of the starting army. But so I'm going to get my recruitment in. I'm going to recruit my first Master Shugenja. I will not be recruiting Shugenjas early on. They are more efficient researchers. However, they are slower researchers, and what I need at the start of the game is research speed. That's far more important than efficiency right now, especially because Jomon typically doesn't have problems in the early game with money. As Jomon, all of your units are quite cheap in terms of gold. Your Sacreds are more expensive, but they also have half upkeep. So look, upkeep cost 7 gold per year. Upkeep cost 8 gold per year. The only unit that costs you, upkeep cost 12, which still is very, very low overall. The only unit that costs you a significant amount of gold is the Samurai Cavalry. And Samurai Cavalry aren't hardly worth it. I mean, I'll recruit some later in the game if I get to that point, because having high combat speed is valuable, but they're not good. They're weak cavalry. If I can find a province that has heavy cavalry available for recruitment, I will always, always prefer to recruit independent heavy cavalry or knights over samurai cavalry, because samurai cavalry are just much worse. So, that's turn 1. There's going to be some diplomacy going on. There's going to be some planning, probably some crying, possibly a lot of fear. We'll see how it goes. I'll see you in turn 2. Actually, before we go, there's one thing I forgot that I want to do, which is I want to look at the Pretenders of the World. So, we have Lavuari, the Pretender of Arcocephale. Arcocephale, of course, is an astral main nation. They do have a lot of randoms on their mystics, so they gain access to a lot of different magic. Water, fire and earth. The Orphic Mystics have death and nature magic, as well as some elemental and some astral, which is interesting. Orphic Mystics can be reincarnated, which I don't know how much effect that has, but they're also spell singers, which means they can cast spells. They cast spells more slowly, but they gain less fatigue from them. So especially Death 2 Orphic Mystics, which is 1/6 of them, can be extremely useful. The Priestesses are just Nature 1 mages, but they have Healer 3, which is an incredibly useful special ability. That is so big. They also have Cerulean Commanders, because Late Age Arcocephali has Monkey Troops, which are size 3 tough monkey troops. And they have Sibyls, they're capital-only mages, which are primarily astral in nature, but can also get death and water randoms, and in communions, these people can be very effective. They also have Fortune Teller, which is pretty cool. We've got Thrice Burnt Apple Store, the Pretender of Man, Lord of Animals, Patron of Huntsmen, Lord of Forgiving. That's a Nature Bless. I don't know what Forgiving does, but that is a Nature Bless. Man has heavily armored tough knights that are really expensive. They have Wardens, which are their sacreds. They are stealthy crossbow infantry with high protection and decent stats all around, so they're pretty cool. They've got Defenders, which have castle defense bonuses and are crossbows, heavily armored crossbows once again. They've got Longbowmen, which are like my samurai archers, but with less protection, and cost a lot fewer resources, and are easier to mass because of that, although they do cost more recruitment points. They have Foresters, which have short bows and dual-wield melee weapons and are stealthy. Pretty cool units, very, very cheap. They have Tower Guard, which are slightly... I mean, they're like the Tower Guard and the Defenders. Castle Defense bonus 2, Castle Defense bonus 1. That's almost the only difference. Defenders have higher protection. I would be recruiting Tower Guard as preferentially anyway. They have regular crossbowmen, which are not protected. These are basically independent crossbowmen. Regular shortbowmen, and they have some standard infantry. Overall, the strength of Man, in terms of its lineup, is in massing tons and tons of crossbows. Mage-wise, they can take Drain for free because they have Mundane Researcher, so they can just take Drain. They have Communions, basically. Magisters Arcane have a wide variety of paths. Magisters have only one path and only sometimes, but are cheap, and they are Mundane Researchers, as well as siege bonuses and spies and masons and all kinds of cool little special abilities. Bishops are holy, so Man does not have great magic, but they can set up communions sometimes. Only 25% of Magisters can participate in communions, and the Magisters Arcane are a little bit expensive to be communion slaves. So magically, Man is not strong. We've got Magical Girl Elizabeth Bathory, who is the Pretender of Ulm. I guarantee this is a Vampire Queen. What he's done is he's taken a Vampire Queen with death and blood, and he's going to be blood hunting in order to start building vampires as quickly as possible. Ulm has blood magic on Fortune Tellers. Ulm has Wolfherds that can summon wolves for free. Ulm has Black Priests, which are basically the same as earlier Ulms, but weaker. Ulm has members of the second tier, which are Astral and Blood crosspaths, and they have Illuminated ones, which are cheap, stealthy spies who are also communion slaves. Illuminated ones are one reason why Ulm is so good. The Fortune Tellers can basically lead communions of Illuminated ones to give you high-level death and high-level nature in combat. Otherwise, it's blood. It's blood all the way, blood all the time, blood forever, blood never stopping. They get death gems natively. They have these Ghoul Guardians that halt sacreds and are undead and really tough. Their troops are heavily armored, but not nearly so heavily armored as they used to be. The Zweihanders and the Ghoul Guardians are very heavily armored, but these infantry not so much. They do have Rangers, which are cheap, stealthy crossbows, which is a really good quality to have. And they have the Black Templars, which are expensive as crap. And they're basically just slightly better heavy cavalry that's sacred, but Ulm almost never takes a bless, so not too scared of them. We have the Angry One, who is the Pretender of Marigny. Late Age Marigny has fire and blood magic primarily. Their Goetic Masters have fire and blood, and occasionally astral or earth. Inquisitors have fire and blood. Basically, Marigny is Demons the Nation. Marigny, like Ulm, is going to focus on blood very, very heavily. They do have these troubadours who can seduce female commanders, but there's not all that many female commanders out there. And they can sail. They have really, really cheap blood hunters who are also efficient researchers, so Diabolists are going to just get spammed by Marigny. And they will set up a big blood economy and summon a ton of devils and come for your butt. So there's that. We have Diores, the pretender of Mictlan. Mictlan is another blood nation, but they're also a water nation. They have a lot of different magic, actually, but their big ones are water and blood. So they have these Mictlan priests who are really cheap, like the standard of cheap blood hunters, and they're also sacred, so they cost you very little. They have their Recruit Anywhere mage. Their only Recruit Anywhere mage is the Nahwali, and the Nahwali is astral and nature with the potential to have a blood or death random. So Nahwali communions are definitely a thing you expect to see from Mictlan. All of these others are capital only, and they have different cross paths with blood. Blood and nature, blood and fire, blood and astral, and blood and water from the Rain Priests, who are also pretty holy. They're all pretty holy. And then they have the King of Rain, who is slow to recruit and has a ton of water magic. They're Amphibious. The Kings of Rain are Atlanteans. They're Amphibious, and the Rain Warriors are Amphibious Sacreds. They do have the Jaguar Warriors that all levels of Mictlan have. If they can go underwater, they can recruit special underwater troops, and they can recruit underwater mages, like the Priest of All Waters. Now, the Priest of All Waters is basically a strictly inferior Rain Priest, but they can be recruited in all underwater forts, so it gives you another spammable Recruit Anywhere mage, other than Nahwalis. The main thing you'll see from Mictlan is blood magic and summons. Mictlan typically trashes their scales, takes a huge bless, uses Jaguar Warriors to expand, goes up blood, and starts summoning Ocelotls and Beast Bats and all kinds of crazy national blood summons that are sacred and benefit from their bless. We have myself, Weeaboo Meme Lord, Emperor of Earthquakes, Lord of the Harvest, the self-manifested Lord. Also, Diores has taken a big water bless, so he's taken quickness. And He Who Tempers the Spirit, is that astral? I don't know what that is. That might be a generic, but he's taken at least water 10, and probably a couple of other blesses as well. We have Gilderian the Decayed, who is the pretender of Agartha. Agartha is basically a lot like Middle Age Ulm. They have very, very tough, heavily armored troops. They have 3 different kinds of crossbows. They have cheap crossbows, they have defended crossbows, and they have super heavy protected crossbows. The late age is crossbows the age, what can I say? Agartha has a lot of death magic and a lot of earth magic, and they have a lot of special death summons, as well as some special earth summons that explode, which is pretty cool. They also have Chthonian alchemists who can give them fire-water crosspaths, which means they are an acid nation. They can summon green lions, they can cast acid spells in combat. It can be a problem. They also have these guys who are cool. Not efficient, but cool. Cave Knights, they're not sacred, but they have dark vision, and they have very high protection, and if the guy dies, you have a Cave Drake. So, the Cave Drake is even more invincible. So Cave Knights are kind of cool. They're not, like I said, they're not efficient, but they're kind of cool. Agarthan Sacreds are these blind fighters, which aren't really worth it. They're blind. They have Spirit Sight. They count as magical beings, so they have to be led by mages, and their only attack is a short sword. They're tough. They have good attack and defense skills, but they're really expensive, and they only have 1 mediocre attack. So, I don't consider them very useful. You can lead them with Blind Lords if you want to, but why would you? Their smallest mage is the Attendant of the Dead, who has Death and Earth crosspaths and Holy, so it can cast some of the national spells and stuff. Decayed, Shadow of Death, Master of Terror, God of Dirt, Earth and Death, not surprising. We've got Dolon, the god of Pangea. Pangea is a lot like earlier eras of Pangea, but slightly better. Pans have earth, nature, and death blood potentially. Dryads have nature. Centaur sages have astral and elemental randoms. Keepers of traditions are holy Minotaur lord people. The Grove Minotaurs still are not efficient. They're still not worth it. Centaur cataphracts have armor now, like a lot of armor. Centaur cataphracts are in some ways objectively superior to like normal cavalry, but cheaper. I guess they have one fewer attack. You also have centauride crossbows, which are kind of hilarious. And you have satyr snipers, and satyr snipers are really good crossbows with high attack. They do have high resource cost, but that's because they wear a bunch of armor. And, of course, you have satyr hoplites, which are formation fighting, recuperating, very, very solid hoplites. So there's that. You even have dryad hoplites who have awe and are sacred. These are tough to deal with. They're just a pain. They're a problem. And Pangea can recruit Dryad Hoplites and gets Nature and Earth Gems. I mean, they're just Pangea. They have all the national Pangea stuff. They have a little bit of blood. Not much blood, but a little bit. And they can be a huge problem to deal with. They're less overpowered than any other era of Pangea. We've got Big Bill Hell, the pretender of Bogarus. Bogarus is a nation, as I said, that really gets going in the late game. Their troops are not very good overall. Their sacreds are literally garbage, but they're very, very spammable, and they're stealthy and cause unrest, which can be hilarious, but isn't very good. They have a whole bunch of mages, and the mages all do different things, and the mages are all efficient researchers, except for the calendologists. Bogarus can form communions very effectively, and they can go into blood very effectively. The Master of Names is their best researcher, and he gets a blood random, and he has astral. The Fivefold Angel natively has blood 2, and the Starets, their slow-to-recruit capital-only mage, has a whole bunch of paths plus blood and astral. So, yeah, they basically recruit a whole bunch of occultists, get a whole bunch of blood going, and they, in the late game, if they're not dead, they cause absolute havoc, especially because they still have access to all the national Rus summons, and they have enough astral to actually take advantage of the powerful ones. I'm not going to pronounce that. But he's the pretender of Potala. And so Potala, as you see, has a lot of Nagas, has all the monkeys that earlier monkey nations do. Potala has cheap astral communion slaves and astral nature crosspaths, like all monkey nations do. They also have the Nagarajas, who have water, earth, and nature. The Naginis, who have water, earth, nature, and a random. Nagarajas don't have a random? No, they have holy too. And the Nagarishis, who are even more powerful, have water, earth, astral, and nature, plus a random. Tons and tons of paths. In Naga shape, they're better at water. They can shapeshift into humans, in which case they're not quite so good at water. And then they have the Naga Chiefs they can recruit in all caves, which are just basic commanders. You can see why I say the Nagas are pretty good. Naga warriors have 3 melee attacks. Hypnotize is a melee attack. It doesn't affect blind units. And it can't be repelled. It's a magic resistance negates stun ability, which is actually quite powerful. And then they have the Falchion, which is a pretty good attack, and they have Poison Fangs. So they get 2 attacks in melee, plus they hypnotize, and they can spit poison at range. They're pretty solid. They're cap only and they're magical beings, so they have to be led by mages, which means Bandar commanders and these basic guys cannot lead them around. And you have to recruit at least a Yogi or a Nagaraja in order to lead them. Naga Chiefs can lead a few, but not many. Nagas are amphibious, so technically Potala is an amphibious nation. They're not a very good amphibious nation. They can basically only go underwater with their Nagas and Naga warriors. And those are solid, but I think Jomon could beat Potala underwater. They do have war elephants, so their expansion's probably pretty good. But in any case, and they've got astral, earth, and water income. Then we have Graven Image, the god of Raga, Prince of Blood, God of the Wind and of the Hoe, Lord of Navigation, Friend of Sailors. Oh, brother. So he's taken... Well, actually, that's blood, obviously. I think these are air. This might be water, but I think these represent water and or air. That, I think, is nature. So either he's taken a hugely memeish bless, or he's not taken much bless, and I can't actually tell which one. If I had to bet, I would bet he's taken a huge bless. Zayedans. I was totally wrong this whole time. I kept saying Zadaean. It's Zayedin. So, Zayedans. They have 4 attacks. They have 20 protection. They have 15 defense skill and 13 attack skill. They do fairly high damage, although not unreasonable damage. And then when they die, they turn into a griffin, and the griffin loses these 2 attacks and still has 2. Oh, and the lance only works on the first attack, so it's actually 3 attacks plus a lance charge. But so you can see why it is I say they're awful. They're just awful, and they're fire resistant. The Turns also have elephants. They have a whole bunch of cavalry of varying degrees of good. They have winged troops of varying degrees of good, usually not much. You don't see these very often because, as I said, Raga almost always goes Heat 3, and these troops can only be recruited in cold provinces, and they have ice protection and stuff. Heat 3 Raga is a blood nation. Karapans have blood randoms. Dasters have blood guaranteed, although they are expensive. And Turan sorcerers have fire, death, and blood, plus a random there. So, yeah, Raga's a blood nation. It's not as bloody a blood nation as some of the others, but it hardly matters because they can expand really, really easily with Zayedans, and it can be a serious, serious problem. At least their temples are expensive. And of course, the Yedens can only be recruited in the capital. But, see, it's interesting. Their military doesn't even mention the cavalry. It's flying units, griffin riders. That's it. That's all you need. So, then we have She of the Full Scales, the god of Atlantis, Princess of Death and Rebirth, Princess of Disease, Guide of Souls. Those are all death. So she has Mondo Death is what I'm seeing there. Atlantis is a death nation. They have these special underwater recruits, the Merciful Mothers and the Forgiving Fathers. Forgiving Fathers are pretty good mages. They can have acid paths. They're above ground mages. They have Tungaliks, which have water and death. And they have Angakoks, which have water and death. And water and death randoms. So that's what Atlantis does. Atlantis just does water and death magic really, really, really hard. The only astral they actually get is from the Forgiving Fathers, so hardly worth anything. Their normal recruitments are... They have these Arsatut, which are their sacreds that have a really high damage magical bone glaive attack that inflicts weakness, so they're pretty good. They've got Ice Guard, which have ice protection and ice glaives. They have Ice Guard with swords that have ice protection. They have Ice Warriors that have ice protection, so they're really all about the cold. They have the Mournful, which hit hard and are meaty, but aren't very good otherwise. If they get underwater, they have the Unsleeping, which are very good, albeit expensive. And they have some basic Atlantean units they can recruit down there too. Their only sight gives them, let me guess, water and death. At least they don't have crossbows, though. I mean, there's that. But that's the gods. It's going to be a tough game. I'm not going to lie. It's going to be rough, especially with Raga up here. If Raga comes after me full bore, my only real hope is to hold them off for a while with Weeaboo Meme Lord, while I try to get the other weak nations around the periphery to gang up on him and eliminate him, which shouldn't be all that hard to do, but, well, it might be really hard to do because attacking Raga is terrible. Attacking Raga as a weak nation just means you're going to be jumped on by griffins over and 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 over again. And it's bad. But we'll do the best we can. If I can get enough expansion, and if by the start of year 1 I can have some Ryujin under construction, or if sometime in year 1 I can start recruiting Ryujin from both of these provinces, I think I'll probably have a shot. But we'll see. Maybe I'll make friends with Raga. Maybe I'll make friends with other nations and fight Raga. Maybe Atlantis and I will be best buddies. I don't really know. And we will it'll take time to tell. So, thank you all. I'll actually let you go now. This has been a really long turn one, but I wanted to get through all the contenders here. So, see you in turn 2.